Well, inform me, BBC, what can I expect from the only two parties that are anywhere near winning the election? What can I expect from them and all the big hot topics? What's going to happen? Who should I vote for? General election 2019. Compare the party manifestos. Let's compare the party manifestos. So let's see what you can do here. You can select a nation. Well, select England, I guess. And then you select a party. I think you can select two parties. So Conservative and Labour. And you can compare the two. And I guess, let's compare them. Let's see what they're offering. Let's see. So we've got the top priorities here. Let's have a look at their top priorities. So the Conservatives, it says Boris Johnson, their leader. He wants to bring back the withdrawal agreement. Bring back the withdrawal agreement bill to Parliament before Christmas to achieve Brexit by the end of January. So I think that's the agreement that they already rejected. I guess if he gets a new mandate, certainly if he gets an absolute majority, he should be able to get that through Parliament and get Brexit done, I guess is the idea. 20.5 billion additional funding in NHS in England by 23-24. 50 million more GP appointments and 50,000 more nurses. I've seen a few people disputing those facts. 20 billion more by 23-24. What does that mean? Because I mean, is that including? So what are the projections now under current tax revenue? The amount we're generating at the moment, and is that factoring in inflation and things like that? Because in 4 or 5 years' time, what would you expect we would be spending on the NHS if we didn't make any cuts? That kind of sounds like they're going to maintain spending. 50 million more GP appointments. I'm not sure what that means. Isn't that relying on more people being ill? Or more people being old? Less people are going to die. That's what they're saying. They'll all be bothering their GPs, but they won't be dying. I think that's the core message there. And 50,000 more nurses. I've heard somebody dispute that. They were saying that that is a little bit of a manipulation because that's also taking into account new nurses who are coming into the profession, nurses that are coming from abroad, and obviously, yes, there will be 50,000 more nurses in quantity. I don't think so. There'll be 50,000 new nurses over the next 5 years. Of course, there'll be a lot retiring or leaving the workforce or changing jobs or moving to another country and all that kind of thing. So I'm not sure there'll be actually 50,000 more nurses working than there are now. But I could be wrong about that again. Guess I should pay more attention to stuff, to the debates and that. But anyway, it says 20,000 more police officers over the next 3 years in England and Wales. Again, not sure where they get that 20,000 figure from. Is that just the projections that how many? Again, when they say more, do they mean there are going to be more physically, 20,000 more than there are now active police officers? That seems hard to believe. I suppose that's not accounting for the ones that will retire and stuff. So, yeah, that seems a bit unbelievable. This is a bit that sounds good, though. No rises in income tax or national insurance contributions or VAT. So, things that would certainly maintain a stable environment for businesses and you'd imagine encourage people to start new businesses here, maybe for foreign investors to come to the country if they know that there's a stable system which has been working. It's got people pretty much in full employment in Britain, for better or worse, whatever you want to say about working conditions, stagnant wages and all that, legitimate arguments. But I think it's fair to say that if you're going to set up a business, or if you're running a business, that's going to give you a fairly stable environment in which you know how the system works, and it's not going to worry you too much, I don't think. Introduce an Australian-style points-based immigration system, so this is why they're getting called racist all the time, which treats everyone equally regardless of where they come from. Conservative way of looking at things, but I don't know. I guess this idea of leaving the European Union ends this free movement thing, so you have to replace it with something else. I guess Brexit was about stopping free movement because people were not happy about people being able to come into any part of Europe and then being able to travel freely to the UK. So I guess you look to other countries where things are going pretty well. Australia is a country with a very strong economy, a very stable economy, and they've got a lot of immigration, but they have this points-based system where basically they take in people who are needed, who can contribute positively to the economy. So for a lot that could be said about that in terms of its heartless capitalistic way of looking at things, it's I don't know, it's certainly a defendable, reasonable thing to believe that could work, I suppose. How they would do it, how they would implement it, how soon they would implement it, all those kind of things get sort of left in the air, don't they? Anyway, let's move on to the top priorities of the Labour Party, because these are really interesting. There is a similar vein. I wonder if you can spot it, though. There's a similar message in all of their top priorities. £400 billion on the National Transformation Fund. £400 billion. Nothing, yeah. Including £250 billion for energy, transport, and the environment. They're going to give the environment some of that. And £150 billion for schools, hospitals, and housing. Now, £400 billion. These numbers sound a bit massive, I think, and they are. But you have to think about it in relative terms. The current UK budget, I think, from the tax revenue that it has is it around 850 billion, something like that. So increasing it by 400 billion. What does that mean? The National Transformation Fund, is this an extra 400 billion that they're going to get from somewhere by additional tax revenue, by taxing, what they call the 1%, increasing corporation taxes? I don't really see how you can increase tax revenue so quickly by almost 50%. I guess maybe you could do it for 1 year. Is that in 1 year? Is that per year, though? Is that how much would be added to the budget? I don't know. It's hard to say. Of course, you've got this sort of populistic message, though, there in the top priority. It's we're gonna the environment, energy, schools and hospitals and housing and stuff, and free candy for kids. Yeah, that always makes me suspicious when I see something like that. And you can see sort of the Conservative Party saying, yeah, we'll give you stuff, 20 billion here, 20 billion there, And then they can sort of weasel out of that and say, well, there's nothing there. It's sort of okay how it is. We're conserving things as they are. And everyone sort of goes, well, yeah, that's kind of what we voted for. Labour, 400 billion? I can pull that out of my arse. Anyway, 75 billion, another 75 billion, not sure where it's going to come from, for 100,000 new council homes a year by 2024 and 50,000 affordable homes a year through housing associations. So How many council houses are being built currently per year? Because that's a good question. I'm not sure what the actual number is. I'm guessing it's lower than that. There's a housing crisis, so we're told. Young people finding it hard to get on the housing ladder. How do you solve that? I mean, you can. This is one way, I guess. Building council homes. I think I've heard a pretty good argument in defence of freeing up brownfield and greenbelt land. Partly because there's this idea that greenbelt land is just natural meadows and stuff, but a lot of it's farmland which has been subsidised for no good reason. Inefficient farms being helped out by the government, which is land that could be freed up for companies to build on. I guess. Why not? I'm sure some companies are clever enough to build houses that people can afford. Some bright spark would have that idea, surely. Not just going to build it for the 1%, are they? I don't know. 75 billion. Yeah, again, there's a question, where does that 75 billion come from? Don't know. I'm hoping something about this will be cleared up by this BBC machine thing that they've got here. But I don't know, 50,000 affordable homes as well through housing associations. How's that going to be done? What are you going to do? Price controls? Not really. Again, not sure how that's going to work. Hopefully this page will clear it up. Free full fibre broadband for every home and business in the UK by 2030. Well, if you're giving free broadband to people, that means that it's free at the point of use, like everything that's free in the government. So that you're going to have to increase taxes because broadband providers are private companies. And, people did not provide things for free. And broadband is a good and a service which has to be paid for. So this idea that you can just give it to people for free is obviously nonsense. Somebody's paying for it again. I guess it's that 1% again. They're just gonna, the 1%, they're just gonna pay for everything, and they're just gonna stay here because we're gonna tell them to stay here, and they're gonna keep producing, and they're not gonna go off to Luxembourg or Andorra or the Cayman Islands. They're gonna stay right here in the UK, and they're going to keep, handing over their hard-earned money. £10 an hour minimum wage for all workers. You'd have thought that by now, would have learned that hiking up the minimum wage does not, certainly in the short term, really doesn't help. Clearly doesn't help businesses, small or large. Clearly doesn't help the lowest earners. I mean, it's a 10-hour minimum wage for all workers. I mean, that includes 16-year-olds who are trying to get a job collecting glasses. Are you allowed to collect glasses as a 16-year-old? I think you are in certain places. Washing dishes maybe in a restaurant, working in retail. Imagine a 16-year-old comes to you asking for £10 an hour. Spotty 16-year-old can barely say hello without stuttering. Or just a 22-year-old, 23-year-old who's, a bit more confident, perhaps got a bit more experience, almost certainly has a bit more experience either in life or in retail or in washing dishes or in anything. Who the customer's going to prefer? Well, if you can't pay the 16-year-old less, which is, I'm assuming what Labour are saying here, £10 an hour minimum wage for all workers. I'm guessing that means for all workers. Never sure, but it sounds like there's not going to be brackets according to age. At least when I was in the UK, I mean, I don't live there anymore, but I think that there was a bracket from 16 to 18 and then 18 to 21 and then over 21-year-olds earning different hourly wages, which seemed like a reasonable, it seemed like a way of persuading businesses to employ younger people, and it didn't price younger people out of the market, essentially. It didn't stop them getting work because there was an incentive for people to give them a chance because they were cheaper to employ. And obviously, if they're good at their job, they can go on to bigger and better things, and they become more valuable to the company as they get older and more experienced, if they choose to stay at that company. Anyway, hold another referendum on Brexit. So yeah, obviously, as the referendum that we had in 2016 didn't cause any problems, we need to hold another one. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on then, specifically to Brexit. Let's see what both parties' manifesto pledges are on Brexit. So we've got the Conservatives. They want to bring back the withdrawal agreement to Parliament, as we mentioned before, and get it passed through. So obviously Boris Johnson's talking about if he has an absolute majority, the idea is he can get backing for his plan and get it through Parliament and get us out of the EU by the end of January, which again, I think I'd have to say is along the lines of what I think more or less should be done. I don't know. Negotiate free trade agreement with the EU to come into force in 2021. That kind of sounds worrying. That it's going to take over a year to get any kind of free trade deal with the EU. You imagine that the current EU customs union would stay intact until then, or what would happen? World trade rules, as they called them, or something like that. What would happen between the time in which they're negotiating? What would happen in that negotiation period? How would we trade with the EU? I guess that needs to be cleared up. But again, I don't see why there can't be a free trade agreement, brought into play. Seems like it would be beneficial to both the EU and the UK. So, that seems like a fairly obvious thing that would have to happen. You're not going to increase taxes. Again, I think even if that doesn't happen, there is a way out of that. UK can unilaterally reduce import taxes, which sounds, it's paradoxical, but that can actually have a positive effect. If businesses are able to continue selling to your country, that tends to facilitate the possibility of that unilateral decision becoming a mutual agreement further down the line. Will not extend the transition period after the UK's departure beyond December 2020. Well, again, it sounds like, the 2021 thing, the negotiate a free trade agreement to come into force in 2021. I guess that would be January 2021, with December 2020 being sort of the cut-off date. Look, if we can't agree to anything, 2020, we're just going to say, fuck it, let's go. Enter freedom of movement between the EU and the UK, and a new points-based system on immigration. Well, we've been over that. Negotiate free trade agreements with other trading partners around the world. Well, I guess that was the whole point of this. We don't want to stay in the customs union. We want to be free to negotiate with the US, with China, with Australia, New Zealand, with all the countries outside of the EU, with which we already have strong trading relationships. I guess it makes sense that we'd want to reduce import and export tariffs bilaterally with all of those individual countries. Yeah, I mean, again, nothing crazy there, I don't think. However, the Labour manifesto pledges, again, sound more complex and need a lot more clarification anyway. Renegotiate a Brexit deal within 3 months and hold a public vote within 6 months with the negotiated deal alongside remain on the ballot paper. Well, it's strange that it seems like the EU have agreed to a certain amount of concessions with Boris Johnson's deal. It doesn't seem like the worst deal in the world. So they want to sit down again with the EU for another 3 months, and that's what they're saying in the manifesto pledge. I mean, God knows how long it would actually be, and then within 6 months have another vote on the referendum on this rehashed deal, in which we assume there'd be more concessions, surely, and then the other option would be remain. So you basically got a bad deal and remain as the options on this second referendum, which seems like it really seems like a stab in the back to the people to everyone who was told that what they voted was binding. If not legally, they were told that it would be carried out. It seems completely anti-democratic, completely undemocratic. What's going on? To me. Anyway, negotiate UK-wide custom union membership, close single market alignment, and guarantees on workers' rights and environmental protections. Again, UK-wide customs union membership, negotiate it. So there would be another referendum or something like that, negotiating whether we should stay in the customs union. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that. Is that to say UK-wide? What do they mean by Scotland? And they mean like Scotland and Northern Ireland rather would be consulted on whether they wanted to remain in the customs union or not. Yeah, it seems all a bit. I'm not very clear on what they mean there. The customs union seems like a thing that we want to get out of, surely. If we're leaving the EU, we don't want to be trapped in in something that stops us making our own deals with non-EU members. We'd be bound to the decisions made in a parliament of which we have no say. So it seems completely mad that you'd want to stay in the customs union. Negotiate UK-wide customs union membership. That seems like they're talking about remaining in the possibility of remaining in the customs union. Close single market alignment. Close single market alignment and guarantees on workers' rights. Is that close or close? I think I'm a bit thick. Close single market alignment and guarantees on workers' rights and environmental protections. Well, okay, whatever. Good. Let's move on. I mean, I don't even know what they mean by that. Guarantees on workers' rights. Workers' rights, does that mean EU members? Single market, close single market alignment. So the single market is referring to the European single market, I guess, and they just want to continue to be closely aligned with that. Not change anything. Guarantees on workers' rights, so guarantee the same rights for the workers that the EU have already. It just sounds like it's basically just stay in the EU and environmental protections as well. So anything the EU says about the environment, just agree with it. Is that? I could be getting this all wrong. Please tell me if I am. I don't live in the UK, so I'm only following this vaguely from afar. But I think I can spot bullshit when I see it. I don't know. Any agreement must keep must meet the UK's international obligations, particularly the Good Friday Agreement. Okay. Remove the threat of no deal. Yeah, okay. So the no deal thing, which is a threat to the EU that if they don't accept our terms, look, we'll just bugger off and do our own thing. Remove that threat. Bow to the EU's every will. I mean, you could sum that up. That whole thing there, the manifesto pledges on Brexit. That's it. It just seems insane. Just seems insane. It's basically like saying to people, look, we'll bend over, right, for the EU and say, look, do what you want to us. And then they'll do that. And then we'll say to you, hey, look, do you want to get fucked by the EU? Or do you just want to stay in the EU? Stay in the EU, please, I guess. If those are my two options. I really think there'd be huge problems. There'd be riots on the street if this happened. It just seems so chaotic. This is a problem with when the left goes too far, it's too chaotic. You know, when the right goes too far, it's too orderly, which is also a problem. But the left goes too far and it's just chaos. It's just madness. No one knows what's happening. And this seems to be what's happened in the Labour Party to me. Don't know. As I say, could be completely wrong. Please let me know if I am. If you think I am. NHS and care. I think I'm going to be able to guess, more or less. Like, here, the NHS has become such like a religion. Religious... People just... I mean, the madness I have to read on Facebook. People posting about how we're admired all over the world and all this bollocks. But, what about it, the NHS? So I think the Tories are going to say something along the lines of, we'll keep the NHS as good as it is and we'll give a few billion to the NHS. Yeah, millions of nurses. Oh, there'll be loads of nurses and GPs and stuff. And the Labour, they're just going to go, for £1 trillion for a jillion nurses. And I'll see if I'm wrong. I don't know. So here we go. £20.5 billion additional funding for the NHS in England by 23-24, with additional money to cover rising pension costs. Very inspecific. I don't know what that means. Again, 20 billion in 4 or 5 years' time. Is that including inflation? I mean, maybe something like 300 plus billion that's already spent on the NHS every year. I could be getting my figures wrong. It's a year since I've read anything about this. I think it's in that region. I think the UK's annual budget is something like that. No, it's something like 850 billion or something like that. And let me know if I'm getting that wrong. And something like 300 billion of that goes on the NHS, 250, 300, I don't know what it is exactly. So increasing it by 20 billion in 4 or 5 years, maybe that's what the pound will be worth in 4 or 5 years. Do you see what I mean? So increasing the budget, that might just be in keeping with inflation. So in fact, you wouldn't be increasing the budget, you'd be maintaining the budget. I don't know. It says additional funding, so I suppose you have to say after inflation is what is intended by that. But the way they manipulate the figures, it's just nonsense, isn't it? So who knows? Build 40 new hospitals over the next 10 years and give 20 hospitals an extra 1.8 billion cash injection. 1.8 billion on 20 different hospitals. I don't know how far that goes, what that pays for. 40 new hospitals over the next 10 years. Is that what was already going to happen? Is that just inevitable? Is that something that's already in the pipeline? God knows. £5 billion for social care over 5 years and develop new long-term plan with cross-party support. Okay, 6,000 more GPs. Again, this thing about however many thousand more GPs this time, 50,000 more nurses, bringing back nurse bursaries. Again, it just sounds like they're saying, to be honest, the Conservative Party, they're doing what they're saying. They're saying they're going to invest more, there are going to be more things, but it's not as grandiose as the Labour Party are just, throwing billion-dollar price tags out there and saying that, they'll throw trillions at everything, But anyway, end hospital parking charges, selected patients, NHS staff, £78 million a year, whatever. So this is interesting, actually. NHS and care, Manifesto pledges at 26 billion. So if you looked at the Conservatives again, they said 20.5 billion or 23-24. Labour saying 26 billion increase in funding, 23-24. So I guess even though that is £5.5 billion difference, I don't know how significant that is, really, with bearing in mind how many billions are already spent on the NHS. With a focus on cutting waiting times and boosting mental health services. Well, okay, the focus is there. God knows how they're going to do that exactly. How are they going to cut waiting times, rather. God knows. Again, it's anybody's guess. Boosting mental health services. Okay, I guess. Yeah, if you say so. And private provision within the NHS. Stop the sale of the NHS land and assets and set up a state-run pharmaceutical company. That sounds like madness, I have to say. Now, I'm not sure where I stand on this. So, the private provision within the NHS. So we're saying that this government-run series of hospitals, which is the NHS, with all of their state-employed doctors and nurses, that costs us 300 billion or whatever it costs a year to run. Would be cheaper if we set up our own pharmaceutical companies and they were the only ones that could provide the NHS with drugs. Now that sounds extremely crazy. Like I mean, it sounds like one of those things that just on the face value, you're just like, oh yeah, that might work. Like everything with socialism, but it just seems mental. It's just like dreamland. We're going to set up a company to supply our other company. The state monopoly, I mean, surely what you'd want are loads of companies vying for the public contracts. And the state company, the NHS, can choose the best supplier. You'd have thought. And you'd have to try and eliminate corruption and collusion within the private companies, and we know pharmaceutical companies obviously don't have the best rep for things like that, so you have to be wary of that, of course. But setting up a state pharmaceutical company, that sounds terrifying. I don't know, maybe it's done in other parts of the world and it works well. God knows, but again, it's so ambitious. It's so, I don't know, it just sounds like fairy tale land. Again, I don't know, let me know. I could be completely ignorant of all this, but again, it just seems like the left, when it goes too far, is chaos. They're just like, well, there's this big system that's really complicated, it's underfunded, and there's problems with where they're buying all their stuff from. So I tell you what we need to do. We need to tear it all down and start again. And I don't think it just seems arrogant the way socialists look at the world. It's like, here are all these big complicated systems. You've got no idea. You've been running them for 10 years. You've got no idea. I'm going to come in. You're not going to buy from all these companies with decades or centuries, some of them, of experience in developing drugs. And no. They can all fuck off. We're going to build a mega pharmaceutical company, and that's going to be the only one that supplies drugs to the NHS. Even if all the other competitors are better at it than us. They're not. They can't be. The state is perfect. The state is beautiful. It'll make an amazing pharmaceutical company just from scratch, and that will supply the NHS, and we'll be fine. And it won't cost anything because it's public. See, this is why people start with this magic money tree stuff. Where's that going to... I don't know. Again, very willing to listen to contrary arguments, but come on, there's a lot stacking up here where they're just like, no, this is all wrong, all wrong. We need to make it state-run, eliminate everything, everything's going wrong, and we know how to make it right. I just don't trust it. I don't trust it. I don't trust that way of thinking. 10.8 billion for free personal social care for over 65s. More free stuff. I don't know. Again, where's that coming from? 10 billion, I guess that's nothing. This is hundreds and hundreds of billions that they've already pledged. Free prescriptions, free dental checkups, and hospital car parking. So not only the car parking, the Conservatives have gone, okay, the car parking. You can park your car, fucking hell, Jesus. We're Labour light. But free dental checkups and free prescriptions. Okay, I mean, okay, again, all stuff that you could say are benevolent ideas. There's a lot of people and they've got a lot of teeth. Free prescriptions, we've got an ageing population. Free prescriptions for who? For over 65s or for everyone? I mean, for everyone, for everything? I don't know. Train a new generation of GPs to provide 27 million more GP appointments each year by increasing training practice places from 3,500 to 5,000. So 1,500 new training places. 27 million more GP appointments each year. We're a country of 65 million, so we're not China or India or even America. We're the UK, 65 million of us. So that'd be like half of us having another appointment every year. Why? I don't know. It all seems really too ambitious to me. Whatever. Let's move on. That's the NHS for you. Crime's been a big one. Crime, I've been following Sean Bailey and the Conservative candidate for Mayor of London, and he's constantly on it. And you've got to say a criticism against Sean Bailey perhaps is that he politicises the pain of families. Young boys getting stabbed to death. But then I guess that's why. Whose job is it to make a noise about that kind of stuff? And if someone genuinely cared about it, you would want to change things. You would want to talk about the big issues. And I think if you're living in London, the big issue is knife crime, violent crime at the moment, in general. So, I mean, Sadiq Khan's taken a bit of a bashing over the last few years on his crime record. People saying that London's more violent than New York now, or it has been. There's been certain months in the year a higher rate of murder, of homicides in London than in New York. I think London is slightly bigger than New York, but not a lot. They're very similar sized cities. There's something like 9 million in London, 8.5 million in New York, something like that. And obviously New York, everyone considers it, probably it's not all, but because of all the films and everything, we assume it is this battleground of of gang violence. I'm sure. I don't know. Well, anyway, crime, including police and prison funding, staffing, sentencing, youth services, and legal aid. So, well, let's have a look at that. See what we've got. So, Conservatives Manifesto pledges 20,000 more police officers. Whoa, 20,000 more police officers. There you go again. Whoa. I'm losing it. It's falling off. There we go. 20,000 more police officers in England and Wales over the next 3 years. Again, are we plucking these numbers out of the sky? Where are they coming from? Yeah, you get what I'm saying, surely. It sounds a bit grandiose, I don't know. 10,000 extra prison places and 2.5 billion for improving prisons. Okay, small numbers it sounds like to me. 10,000 over the whole country and 2.5 billion for improving prisons. It sounds doable, I guess. We do have massive national debt, and even though the Conservatives have worked over the last almost a decade to reduce the surplus in the budget, the public deficit, I should say, the deficit, not the surplus, the public deficit. And the debt's still there, something like 1.7 trillion public debt. So all these billions that they're promising left, right and centre, of course, the in the back of the mind is like, well, if they fucking knew there was 1.7 trillion in debt, and you've got people offering 400 billion on shite, I don't know. It seems... Anyway, criminals imprisoned for 4 years or more to serve at least 2/3 of their sentence before release. Well, that's something I've always found a bit weird, I mean, if you sentence someone to 4 years, it's because it is deemed that the crime they've committed is worthy of a 4-year sentence. To then say, you're getting out after 2 years, I don't know, without any new evidence coming up, without a retrial, I don't know, without any... I don't know, it just seemed funny that it's sort of for good behaviour, a 4-year sentence doesn't mean a 4-year sentence. I've never understood that, to be honest. I've never understood why suspended sentences exist exactly. I guess they're kind of like a warning, aren't they? Suspended sentences. If they say 2 years suspended sentence, it's sort of like, well, I know I live in Spain. A 2-year sentence for anything is nothing. You don't go to prison. Lionel Messi is currently serving a 2-year suspended sentence. Playing in the Champions League. He's not in prison, obviously. for tax evasion. And it's because it was a 2-year sentence. And so long as he doesn't, I guess the condition is so long as he doesn't reoffend, he doesn't go to prison. I think the same thing happened to Jose Mourinho. I could be getting that wrong. No, I'm not saying that those people should go to prison at all. I'm just saying, I'm not really sure what the idea is. Just say, okay, you don't have to go to prison. Just don't do it again or you will go to prison. Maybe that's just the legal term for that, the suspended sentence. Anyway, tougher sentences for violent and sexual offenders as well as animal cruelty. Well, I don't know, what is the evidence on whether tougher sentences reduce crime rates? I don't know, to be honest. What can be said for, I've heard from psychological research, is that with age, delinquents become less likely to commit violent crime. So if you've got a hugely antisocial person at the age of 15, their violence is going to be peaking right from about the age of 15 to around 28 or 30, which time testosterone levels drop, because it's usually men. And I don't know if it is testosterone levels dropping, actually. I might have just invented that. Anyway, their tendency for violence reduces somewhat, and you can sort of let them out. So maybe a longer sentence for violent criminals is a good idea, because it gives there could be a lower probability of reoffending. Who knows? Greater freedom for police to stop and search those known to have carried knives, and anyone caught unlawfully with a knife to be immediately arrested, charged within 24 hours, and in court within a week. Well, again, I guess you don't want a lot of bureaucracy stopping potential stabbers getting sent to prison. Would that give the police too much power? I don't know. You've clearly got a problem in a place like London, in places like London rather, in big cities, with knife crime. You've got to tackle it in some way. Let's see what Labour have to say. Manifesto pledges recruit 22,000 more police officers and prioritise neighbourhood policing. Okay, well, they're going for 22,000. I think it seems like they just want to outdo the Conservatives a little bit, or maybe it's the Conservatives want to just sound almost as good as Labour. I don't know. Who knows? Probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Restore prison officer numbers to 2010 levels and bring PFI prisons back into public ownership. Now I've got a bit of a problem with that, because I'm spending ages on the Labour ones because it's just, it always seems too ambitious. So, restore prison officer numbers to 2010 levels. Is it necessary to restore prison officer numbers to 2010 levels? Do we have the same amount of prisoners? I don't know. Could be. Probably. So maybe that's a good thing. Again, I don't know. I admit my ignorance again. But bring PFI prisons back into public ownership. Bringing prisons into public ownership. It seems to me that we have this idea that a private prison is terrible because it's profiting from people committing crime, but we don't see that public-run stuff only seems to grow. So when you set up a public institution, they only seem to get bigger and demand more funds. So, like, as good as you think the NHS is, don't expect it to shrink. You know, it's only going to. I mean, honestly, look at the Look at the NHS budget over the years. It has only increased. You could say under the Tories over the last 9 years that it hasn't increased in real terms. But I believe it has actually increased in real terms slightly. Even if you account for inflation, it's definitely increased in the actual figure. Whether it has increased according to inflation, I'm not sure. Probably not too much over the last 9 years. But this idea that if you have state-run prisons, they're just going to be really benevolent and try and reduce the amount of people that are working there and reduce the amount of funding that they're receiving. That's complete nonsense. They're going to want to protect their jobs. They're going to want to increase the amount of people working there. It just seems like another thing that the state would have to promise they would protect. We promised to get 1 million more people in prison by 2029. to keep all of those 48,000 new prison officers we promised in their jobs, and then the other 60,000 we're promising to get into their jobs over the next 4 years. I don't know. Scrap shortest prison sentences and introduce a presumption against prison sentences of 6 months or less for non-violent offences. Well, I guess, if we've got a prison overcrowding problem, shorter sentences, non-violent crime, maybe we could look at not putting those people in prison. Whatever. Not sure about that one. Restore legal aid for housing, social security, family and immigration cases, and recruit hundreds of new community lawyers. Okay, just give loads of people loads of money and create new jobs and whatever. Yeah, okay. Who's paying for it? Again, it's just this idea that some benevolent government force will just come and save us all, create loads of jobs and help everyone out of misery. Review the prevent and protect programs. Prevent and protect. Can't remember what that is. Is that something like the stop and search thing? Preventing crime. So they're saying that, wasn't there something that Theresa May did? They weren't allowed to chase people on mopeds. The police weren't allowed to chase people on mopeds because it was endangering their lives, even if they'd just stolen someone's bag. And so there was a massive surge in people snatching handbags because the police were not allowed to chase them. I don't know. Anyway, anything that's sort of protecting, preventing crime, it seems like you'd want to keep that intact. Again, completely out of my depths on that one. Education, let's go. So, Tories, 7.1 billion a year more for schools in England by 2022-23. 250 million a year for at least 3 years, plus a 250 million pounds capital spending boost for wraparound childcare, meaning after school or during holidays. Don't know what they're on about. 2.2 billion pounds for further education, colleges, and established 20 institutes of technology. A new national skills fund of 600 million a year, 5 years. Increased starting salaries, teacher starting salaries to £30,000, and overall teacher salaries. Labour, well, I guess more of the same, but just more of the same. Create a national education service, providing all children and adults free education for life. All adults, all children and adults, free education for life. There you go. I think it's called the internet. £7.2 billion to scrap university tuition fees. There we go. Jesus Christ. Free universities, free education for everyone, whatever. Provide free school meals and all primary school children and reduce class. It's that word free is just so friggin' easy to use, isn't it? When there is no good or service that can be obtained for free, and we know that, it just means someone else is paying for it. And reduce class sizes to under 30 students across all schools in England, recruiting 20,000 more teachers, again, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Fund 30 hours free childcare for all 2 to 4 year olds, and £1 billion for 1,000 new early years sure start centres, whatever, more nurseries, more hospitals, more whatever, yeah. Change tax rules for private schools. Yeah, tax the private schools even more. Yeah, of course. And consider how they can be further integrated into a comprehensive education system. So basically try as hard as you can to do away with private education and people making choices for themselves and spending their hard-earned cash where they want to. Whatever. Again. Change issue, actually. Look at that, can change issue. So, work and benefits. There we go, let's have a look. No rises in income tax, great. Oh, national insurance rates, great. It's going to incentivise contracting new workers. It's going to just make things easier. No rises. So, we know what to expect. Raise the threshold at which individuals pay national insurance to £9,500 in the first budget and later to £12,500. That is just fantastic. No national insurance on people. I mean, can you just imagine the lowest income people, the people who the lowest earners in the country are going to find work so much more easily. They're going to have more money in their pocket. Why? Because companies are not going to have to pay national insurance on top of what they're paying them. National insurance works the same way as it does here, doesn't it? I have to pay for it. For the people who I employ. So the worker doesn't pay it here in Spain. The company pays it. So I'm assuming that's the same in Britain. Anyway, the point is that's another tax that won't be a burden either on the employee or on the employer. Raise the national living wage to £10.50 an hour by 2024. Those over the age of 21. Right, so, okay, this... now, I don't think that minimum wages are necessarily a thing that work and raising them. But that sounds more reasonable. They want to raise it for over 21-year-olds. You know, people who've already got into the workforce, because, you know, people start work in England at, they can start working a lot younger than that. So they want to raise it over the next 5 years. That's probably at the rate of inflation going up to £10.50, something like that, over the next 5 years. I think if it's at £8.50 or something, whatever it's at now, or whatever, I'm not sure what it's at now, but that sounds a bit more reasonable, doesn't it, to maintain those brackets from 16 to 18, 18 to 21. And let's remind ourselves, these Scandinavian countries that the lefties are always on about, they don't. A lot of them don't. I think Sweden, now again, correct me if I'm wrong, don't believe that there is an enforceable minimum wage in Sweden, Denmark or Norway. Could be wrong on that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't think I am though. I think there's no minimum wage, legally binding minimum wage in those countries. So if you're wanting to base your welfare state on those countries, maybe you want to base how they generate so much revenue. on those countries as well, per capita. Raise the national living wage, yeah, but for over 21-year-olds over a 5-year period up to £10.50, yeah, okay, well, alright. Keep the triple lock, the winter fuel payment, the older person's bus pass, and other pensioner benefits. Okay, so they're saying maintain spending there, because I think it's well spent. Continue the rollout of universal credit system. So, keep things more or less as they are, try to reduce a few taxes here and there. Pretty much what you'd expect from a Conservative Party. Again, it creates an air of stability. That doesn't sound great for people who feel like their life is shit and stagnant and their wages are stagnant, and, you know, I know that. But let's see what Labour are promising. Introduce a real living wage of £10 an hour for all workers in 2020. So just like, right, that's it, tomorrow. Everyone's wages are just going up. Madness. Again, chaos to me. I know it sounds great in the short term for a lot of people, but I really don't think it's a good idea myself. Over the age of 16, it's £10 an hour. Suddenly 16-year-olds are going to be getting £10 an hour. They're just not. They're just not going to work until they're in their 20s. That's what happens here in Spain. It's a bloody nightmare. We've got 16% unemployment, 17% unemployment, whatever it's at. Doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. Scrap universal credit, the bedroom tax, and the 2-child benefits limit. And increase the carers allowance for unpaid full-time carers. So, again, just give more and more and more and more and more to everybody. I don't know. They don't like universal credit. They don't like bedroom tax. They want to give more money to people with more children, and I don't know. I suppose of all the points, that seems like the least ambitious and perhaps more debatable that I've seen so far. Scrap the rise in the state pension age, leaving it at 66. And compensate women hit by the decision to accelerate the timetable for raising the age. Compensate them by how much? I'm all for the fact that people who are working for a long time being told that they could retire at a certain age, having made massive contributions throughout their working life to the tax system. Yeah, give them that money back, you fucking bastards. But how much are you going to give back? How realistic is that? How soon? Going to give them a massive lump sum? To everyone who's affected by that change? I mean, everyone? I mean, that's probably millions of people. Millions of women. I don't know. Increase statutory maternity pay from 9 to 12 months, more money. Double paternity leave from 2 weeks to 4, more money. And increase statutory paternity pay, more money. Move to a 32-hour average working week within the next decade with no loss of pay. So, reduce the amount of hours people are working, increase the amount of money people are getting. How? Just give it to them. Where do we get it from? Don't know. Doesn't matter. Not important. Shut up. Stop being racist. I don't know. Yeah, Nazi. Anyway. Let's change issue. Economy. This is going to be a funny one, I think. Postpone scheduled corporation tax from 19 to 17%. The tax cut that Boris Johnson had originally promised he was going to cut corporation tax from 19 to 17%. That, to me, seems like such a good idea. It was clearly proved over the last 9 years, it's clearly been proven that reducing tax on corporations has sparked an increase in revenue generated by corporations. Tax revenue generated by corporate activity. And he says to save £6 billion. You know, I mean, really, for £6 billion? But I'm sure if you made that tax cut, there would be such an increase in government, in private investment and start-up of new businesses. I'm sure that £6 billion would be covered. But anyway, I guess not in the short term. No increase to VAT. That's good. I'm sure people can work with 19% corporation tax. That's pretty bloody low compared to a lot of countries. So, yeah, that's not a bad. Not the end of the world, I don't think. £5 billion to support getting broadband to the hardest to reach 20% of the country. Okay, again, subsidising companies to get broadband to people seems like a bad idea, but it's £5 billion. It's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a significant proportion of the national budget. I guess it's a bit of populism that you can get away with. It's been paid for by not reducing the corporation tax. £3.6 billion Towns Fund for 100 towns to improve their local economy. Don't know what they mean by that. Just going to give money to towns to improve their economy. Don't know, what would that be exactly? What would they give that? Who would they give that money to? Review business rates in England, including extending discounts for small shops to 50%. And cut national insurance contributions for employers by £1,000. I mean, to me, seems like a good idea, helping out small businesses. They employ such a vast number of people in most countries. Small shops reducing their rates of tax, their corporation taxes, their business tax by 50%. Especially if they're struggling, that could mean that shop could live for another year or 2 years, afford to give work to people for another year or 2 years. That seems like a great idea in principle. Cut national insurance contributions for employers by £1,000. Yeah, again, taking the burden off small businesses of having to pay additional costs for workers. That's going to incentivise them giving work to people. You'd think. Otherwise, you know, they're not going to make any saving at all. It's a saving they're going to make on someone they're employing, surely. So, spending on research and development and scientific research to reach 2.4% of the total GDP. Okay, so they want to increase research investment. That sounds like a good thing. 2.4% of GDP. That sounds like probably quite a lot, but don't know what it's at the moment, so don't know how realistic that is. Though it seems like a good place to spend it, I suppose. Who knows? Anyway, economy. Manifesto pledges 400 billion. National transformation thing. Yeah, that was right at the beginning. Environment, schools, hospitals, billions everywhere. £250 billion in loans for a new national investment bank and network of regional development banks with oversight from devolved governments. I mean, every time a government gets involved in banking, I think it's time to start getting worried. You end up with something like the federal bank in the USA, $20 trillion of debt. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. Let's move on. Rail, mail, water and energy grid taken back into public ownership. So this free full fibre broadband for every home and business in the UK by 2030. Nationalising key industries. This just seems like a complete nightmare of an idea. It really does. Again, prove me wrong in the comments. But nationalising all those sectors, I mean, it's just... What's your timescale on that? Again, it just seems so arrogant. It's just like, oh, mail, rail, water, energy, fuck it, they're all doing a terrible job. We'll just manage it all, me and my mates. Yeah. So, I don't know where to begin on how crazy I think that is. But anyway, top 5% of earners to pay more income tax, including a 50% rate on income above £125,000. Also increase corporation tax to 26%. Now this is where you get to the real nightmare politics of the Labour Party, the real populist, hard left stuff. And no, don't tell me that in other countries 26% isn't particularly high. I know it's similar in the USA, but you can have high corporation tax, you can have high income tax, you can have high, but you can't have high everything and nationalise everything and give handouts to fucking everyone. It just doesn't work like that. That's not how the world works. It's this fucking man-child that's running the Labour Party. It's insane. Everyone over £125,000 a year. Do you know, that isn't mega rich. I mean, how look at wages in a place like the USA. Or Switzerland or somewhere like £125,000. Yeah, you're well off, but taking 50% off people who are earning, so they're not earning £125,000. They're earning 60 grand now. Anyone thinks I'm thinking 62.5, 62,500. I can work it out. 50%. That's insane. It's just such a huge amount. You're just taking off people. Oh, they're fucking loaded. It's like, no, fuck how hard they've had to work to get there. What the fuck is the incentive? Right, if your tax bracket is at below that, so what are you taxing somebody who's getting 100 grand? 40%? So someone who's earning 100 grand and someone who's earning 125 grand, what? Earning the same? Are you taking 45 off someone who's earning 100 grand? I mean, it's just, I already think income tax is pretty high. Anyway, but this, it's just 50% over 120%. And then increasing corporation tax to 26%. Yeah, okay, there are other countries that have higher corporation taxes, but that's one of the reasons why so many companies set up shop in London, in the UK. If you just tomorrow decide it's not 19 anymore, it's 26, that is billions to those companies. Yeah, maybe 1 year you'll make money on that, but you'll make a loss over 2 years. You definitely will. The amount of companies will just say, fuck this, I'm going to Dublin, I'm going to Switzerland, I'm going, it's just this arrogance again of how you can just switch things around, you can control prices, you can increase taxes, you can give money to the people who you think deserve it. I'm fucking Robin Hood. I can do magic with numbers. I can nationalise everything and I'll run everything because I know more than all of these companies. They were just evil capitalists. You know, I'll run it with my golden heart, and all of my friends, we've all got golden hearts and are so virtuous. I don't know. Let's move on to the next issue. We must be getting close to the end now. Housing. Come on, housing. Let's see. Build 1 million more homes. Aiming for 300,000 new houses a year by the mid-2020s. Fuck! Well, there you go. A new mortgage with long-term fixed rates, only requiring a 5% deposit to help renters buy their first homes. Again, I don't know, subsidising shit. So I'm guessing if this is what the Tories are suggesting, Labour are just going to blow my mind. 6.3 billion for environmental upgrades to homes, such as grants for improving boilers and insulation, whatever. Abolish no-fault evictions and introduce a single lifetime deposit which moves with the tenant. No fault evictions. Oh, I don't know. That sounds a bit worrying, to be honest. When you start saying, well, the owner can't kick you out because he wants to. It's his house. What if he needs it? What if he thinks that someone else should have the house? It's his, you know. How do you prove that there's no fault? It's his word against yours. Foreigners buying properties in England to pay 3% more in stamp duty than UK residents. Don't know. There you go. Don't know, is that racist? Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? £75 billion for 100,000 new castles, 20,000, 50,000 affordable homes, blah blah blah. Upgrade almost all of the UK's 27 million homes to the highest energy efficiency standards. Yeah, by 2030, yeah, whatever, we'll just say, yeah, 2030, so, 11 years from now, 10 years from now. Yeah, everything will be fucking brilliant. 27 million homes, high energy efficiency, we'll do that. Yeah, of course we will, with the nationalised energy grid and all that shit. Abolish right to buy, of course, and give councils money and power to buy back former council homes. Basically expropriating people is what we're calling it. Giving councils money and power to buy back former council homes. So basically you're going to set a price at which councils can seize property from people who have bought a home after they're told that they could buy government property because it was sold to them. Government property, as though the government is anything. And saying that it belongs to the people of fucking council house. Surely it belongs to the person who's fucking living there, doesn't it? You fucking bastards. It's just like one of the most empowering things that Thatcher did for people. And the right to buy this idea that, alright, we built this for people, but, we want you to feel in control of your own life and destiny. Work hard, save up some money, and you can buy this for a very low price. We'll sell it to you. And then you've got something. You've got something to show for your life. And then this fucking bastard, it depresses the shit out of me that people think that that's okay. Look at the way that's worded. Abolish the right to buy. Can't buy it anymore. State property, you can't buy it. Fuck off. We'll tell you who can live here. If you want to live here, you fucking stay in line, you little pikey. And give councils money and power to buy back former council homes. So it's just like, expropriate them. We'll give you some money, don't worry. How much money are they going to give them? End rough sleeping within 5 years. no more homeless people. Don't know how, but basically, yeah, there'll be no more people sleeping rough. I think there's something like 250,000 people sleeping rough, and that's a real problem in the UK, obviously. End it. It's going to be ended in 5 years. What are they going to do? Exterminate them all? I mean, what? It's just insane. End it. I mean, there are homeless shelters. A lot of people, unfortunately, have psychological problems and they will refuse to sleep indoors. This is a real thing. You know, they choose not to sleep in a building. The people with schizophrenia, paranoia related to drug abuse, they will only sleep outside. Now, I'm not saying that is the core reason there are 250,000 people sleeping rough in the UK, but I'm saying it's a part of it. To think that you can eliminate that in 5 years, what are you going to do? Capture them? Cap rent increases and stop no-fault evictions. So, yeah, I mean, even the Tory party have come up with this no-fault eviction thing. They want to stop it. Capping rent increases and stopping no-fault evictions. Capping rent increases, as though it's just this fucking arrogance again. This idea that you can stop people charging the price they want to. So just let them do that. Let them say, I want you to pay me 20 grand a month or you can fuck off. How many people do you think are going to go and live in your shitty house if you're charging 20 grand a month? You know, to what point do you think people can collude on house prices, right? Individual homeowners. Before one of them goes, you know what, they're all saying 20 grand, I'm going to offer 19 grand and see if I don't get myself a client. I'm going to get myself a lodger. These fucking people, fuck them. I mean, it's just, like I say, so fucking arrogant. Environment, this will be fucking funny. I mean, oh god, they're just going to be exactly the same, aren't they, again? Labour will be more bold. I'm getting so fucking bored of this now. Net zero emissions by 2050, right, whatever, fuck it, there'll be no more emissions by 2050, or there'll be net zero, so whatever, we'll be sucking up as much as we give out, or whatever, I don't know. 9.2 billion to improve energy efficiency at homes and hospitals and all that bullshit. Ban the export of plastic waste in developing countries and make producers responsible for the full cost of dealing with the waste they produce. That actually sounds alright, I guess, you know. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, we should maybe stop that. You know, stop the plastic getting into the oceans and, you know, make people responsible for the shit they're producing, I suppose. Yeah, fair enough. Continue ban on fracking until there is evidence it can be done safely. I guess you need to be careful. I've read a little bit about fracking, and there are lots of people who are convinced that it's very safe. But, you know, I'm going to reserve judgment there. I guess, certainly, you know, we've got a lot of natural gas that we can get our hands on. And we use loads of natural gas to produce energy in Britain. So it seems like fracking would be a way of really improving the economy. Especially if it was done in a responsible way like the Norwegians have done with their oil supply over the last few decades. Plant 30 million trees a year by 2024. Give me fucking trees everywhere. I guess that's good, isn't it? You know, they're sucking up the CO2. I guess that's going to be good, you know, stop polluting. That sounds fine. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I guess it's not that ambitious, is it? 30 million trees a year. If we all plant a couple of trees, get all the kids to do it at school. Get all the prisoners to do it. Manifesto pledges. aim for net zero emissions by the 2030s. Yeah, they're going to do it before then. 90% of electricity and 50% of the heat from renewable low carbon sources by 2030. All renewable. All renewable. All the sunlight and wind and all that. Yeah. Lift the ban on new onshore wind farms and invest in solar, tidal and in wind energy. Well, okay. We're talking about the efficiency and safety of fracking. I wonder what, did they mention anything about nuclear? Windfall tax on oil firms. Okay, they're going to smash oil firms into the ground. Phase out petrol and diesel cars by 2030. All petrol and diesel cars will be fucked off by 2030. Great. Plant 2 billion 2 billion new trees in England by 2040. 100 million! 100 fucking million! Every citizen will have to plant 2 fucking trees a year. Jesus fucking Christ. Pensioners will be getting their pensions, but they'll be fucking working the fields. Fuck you, pensioner. You asked for it. I don't know. Immigration. I guess the Tories' points-based system. Points. You must have points to come into my country, and the Labour will be like, oh, come on, come all, imagine all the fucking people, whatever. Who cares? Whatever. Establish immigration controls and freedom of movement after Brexit. End freedom of movement after Brexit. Yeah, whatever. We get that. Introduce the Australian points-based system. You know, doesn't matter where you come from, so long as you're bringing something good about you. EU citizens to wait 5 years before accessing benefits and to pay an NHS surcharge, like other migrants. Fair enough. We're not in the EU anymore. Fair enough. Fair enough. Bring in an NHS visa that would make it easier for doctors and nurses from around the world to work in the UK. Ooh, I like it. So it's bringing people of value into the UK, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? I certainly don't know. Introduce a startup visa to attract entrepreneurs. There you go. You come in here to set up a business. You know, I liked one of the Australian points-based system. One of them was a whole list of points and fucking... God, I know Spanish people have gone to try and live in Spain. It's so difficult to work there, you know. Translating all your qualifications and all that nonsense. It's crazy, all the exams you have to go through. And they really make it difficult. They want the creme de la creme. Or you can pay $1 million Australian dollars. You put $1 million Australian dollars in an Australian bank, you're in. You've got enough points, sir. You got enough points there, sir. What was that? What's happened? This is the braces. I can't pronounce anything anymore. Got enough points there, son. Son, the people say son in Australia. I've lost it. I used to be good at accents, but I can't do it anymore. Need to think of someone Australian. Who's Australian? I need to think of Christian Vieri. He surprised me when he talked. That's London, innit? I'm getting this all wrong. Fuck this. Yeah. Let's see what Labour want. Protect the rights of 3 million EU citizens in the UK. Protect them. Form a barrier around them. Yeah, okay, fair enough. I think that's fair enough. I'm a UK citizen living in Spain. So I wouldn't want to be shafted by the Spanish government, so I completely understand, you know. Fair enough, I see what they're saying there. Well, they came under certain conditions, let them stay, I don't know. Please, I don't know. No fixed cap on net migration. The difference between those arriving in the UK and those leaving. No cap. It's fine. Fair enough, whatever. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. An immigration system based on the needs of the economy and communities and a flexible work visa system. That doesn't sound too unreasonable. Fair enough. compensation for victims of the Windrush immigration scandal. What was the Windrush immigration scandal? I've heard about this, but I can't remember anything about it. Anyway, come back to that in another video. I remember reading a long article about that. And it obviously made a lasting impression on me. I can't bloody remember what that was. We'll come back to that. End indefinite detention, review alternatives to detention sentence, and close Yarlswood and Brookhouse centres. Well, okay, fair enough. Whatever. Indefinite detention, I guess, isn't a very enlightened thing, is it? I need to end this video soon. Transport! Bloody transport. Manifesto 28 billion. Key roads. 500 million. See, it sounds big, but it's million, not billion. It's not very big. 500 million a year for 4 years. National pothole filling programme. Restore train line shut down in the 60s. Scrap the rail franchise system. Build new Northern Powerhouse Rail between Leeds and Manchester, and invest in the Midlands Rail Hub. Why? Just give money to the railways. Yeah, bloody in cahoots with the rails. It's big railways, that tells you. It's those £220 million to improve bus services across England, including a super bus. We want a super bus and we want it now. Superbus networks. New Veterans Rail Card, giving those who have served in the armed forces a third off rail fares. I'm going off the rails. I've been speaking for so fucking long. Labour. Billions! Millions of billions of trains. I don't know what they're going to offer. Bring rail services back into public ownership. More public shit. Okay. Franchise it. When the franchise expires, fuck it, no more. Public. There we go, all public. Restore 3,000 bus routes. 3,000 bus routes. Yeah, that's that. Whatever. Extend free bus travel to all under 25s where routes are run by councils. Free bus travel under 25. Everyone under 25 will have no money after the Labour Party get into power, of course, because they're all earning £10 an hour, which nobody's going to fucking give to anyone who's under 25, because who the fuck's going to give £10 an hour to anyone who's under 25 who doesn't know their fucking arse from their elbow? Nobody. Invest in transport infrastructure. They're going to invest in transport infrastructure, including building Crossrail for the north and completing HS2. There you go. Airport expansion to pass tests on air quality. Noise pollution, climate change obligations, and economic benefits. Are you going to be good for the economy? That's the last of my questions. Are your aeroplanes noisy? They sound noisy. Fucking hell. Jesus fucking Christ. Democracy. Democracy. It's damn important. Democracy. The Conservatives plan to oppose democracy. No, they oppose an independence referendum in Scotland. We already fucking had one. They voted no. Anyway. Yeah, it's good. So they're opposing it. Whatever. Who cares? I don't care. Introduce a UK shared prosperity fund to be used to tackle inequality, deprivation in each nation. Well, there you go. Introduce a UK shared prosperity fund to tackle inequality, deprivation in each nation. Sounds nice. Don't know what it means. Protect Against Inequality. Prosperity Fund. A fund which will make everyone prosperous. I like the cut of their jib. I like the cut of your jib. My voice is going off the fucking rails. Get rid of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act and review parliamentary boundaries. The boundaries are there and there. Maybe they should be there. Yeah. Where are the boundaries? I don't like those boundaries. We need to review them. I'm losing my mind. Introduce a photo ID requirement for voting. You can't vote. Where's your ID? Fuck off. Now, how many fucking drunk under 25-year-olds are going to get access to that? I wonder, without their £10 an hour. That's what I want to know. I'm asking the big fucking questions tonight. Manifesto pledges of the Labour Party. Extend voting rights to 16 and 17-year-olds and all UK residents in general elections. We want those 16-year-old unemployed people to be voting for fucking Labour. That's what they're saying. We want to give you £10 an hour, but these fucking fat cats in Westminster, they don't want you. They don't know. No, we want £10 an hour. We want you to be able to vote. Oh, you didn't get jobs. You didn't get jobs. That's the Tories' faults. The big fat fuckers who don't want you. They don't want to give you work. Those big evil corporations. I think, shouldn't they be setting up a fund to pay for people's nappies and bottle feeding into the late teens? Free bottle feeding centres for preteens. All VAT cut for under 14s nappy products, sanitary shit. It's a good analogy. Abolish the House of Lords. Abolish the Lords. Go away. Yeah, the House of Lords is a load of shit, I guess. And replace it with an entirely elected second chamber. Who's going to elect them? Yeah, fair enough. Congress, Senate kind of system. Sounds pretty fucking enlightened to me, Labour. You're so fucking woke. Oppose a second Scottish independence referendum in the early years of a Labour government. First year. This year we'll say, wait, Scotland. You just wait a second, Scotland. You wait a year or two and maybe you'll get your referendum. You be a good boy. Yeah. See what you get. Old Papa Labour. Maybe we'll slip something in your stocking for next Christmas. And what else? 5 billion! 5 billion! 5 billion additional pounds. Core funding for councils to bring council services such as a bin collection back in-house within the next Parliament. More bins with £5 billion. I should have started this fucking thing like this, but this is just what happens after I've been reading. I've been reading for like an hour and a half. I don't know how long this has been going on for now, but £10.2 billion for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and England can go fuck themselves because they are inferior to our Celtic brothers. I can read no more. Is this the last point? Yes, democracy has been dealt not a blow. It's been dealt with by moi. We're done. I'm done here. Bye bye.